I think pretty much every kid goes through a dinosaur phase. So if you have any kids that are currently in that phase, I have the perfect kid podcast for them. It's called Digger Rex, and they are going to love it. I'm Andy Smiley, the Friendly Podcast Guide. I'm a mom who has used podcasts to fight the boredom and loneliness of motherhood, and now I want to help you find a podcast that can do the same thing for you. It can be overwhelming to try and find a podcast you'll enjoy in the thousands of shows that are out there. That's where I come in. My episodes are short and they answer all of the questions you'll have about the podcast, so you'll know if it's a good fit for you or not. I'm here to help you find a podcast you'll love without wasting your time. Now, let's talk podcasts. The Digger X team describes the show like this. Born from a miraculous lightning strike in Glen Rose, Texas, Digger Rex is a fusion of an excavator and an ancient reptile, bringing to life an adventurous tale blending science and fantasy. Tailored for young, inquisitive minds, this podcast transports listeners on epic global expeditions where digging deep reveals astonishing dino facts and paleontological wonders. Each episode is about 10 minutes long. Before we learn more about the vibe of Digger Rex, we're going to take a quick break to talk about my free podcast consultations. I've been able to talk to some amazing podcasters about their shows while doing interviews for the Friendly Podcast Guide. And along the way, I've learned so many tips and tricks on how to start a podcast from the hosts I've interviewed and from personal experience. I've talked to podcast hosts about what made their launch successful and what made it more difficult. And I for sure know what I would do differently if I could go back and launch my show again. And I want to share my knowledge with you. That's why I'm offering free podcast consults, and I have a couple of spots open in the next month. If you need help nailing down your podcast idea, figuring out your niche, or have any other podcast questions, I would love to work with you to answer all of your questions and help you launch your show. If you're interested in working with me, fill out the intake form in the show notes. I can't wait to help you make the podcast of your dreams. Now we get to hear from one of the creators of Digger Rex, as she talks about how her son was the inspiration behind starting this awesome show. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jennifer. I am so excited to talk about Digger Rex. But before we dive into this specific fabulous kid podcast, can you introduce yourself a little bit to my listeners?
Absolutely. My name is Jennifer Clary. I'm a co-founder and the COO of the Go Kid Go network. I run it with basically at this point, my life partner, but also one of my closest friends, Maya Glickman. She's the CEO. And she came to me during the pandemic and said, look, I watched my sister. Her sister is a professor at Middlebury in Vermont and was just completely stressed all the time. 2 little kids trying to grapple with, all of the illness related things happening in her family, in society. Her kids were isolated and she didn't want to just be sticking them in front of the television. And I think a lot of parents had issues with that because the American Academy of Pediatrics actually reported a 6x increase in screen time for elementary school kids during COVID, which is, pretty remarkable when you think about it. And of course, a lot of that was down to utilizing things like Zoom for classroom activities, right? Instead of actually going into school. But be that as it may, kids were sedentary, kids weren't as active, kids weren't engaging quite in the same way as they had been pre-COVID. And so when Maya came to me, she was like, look, there really needs to be like a Pixar for your ears, something that kids feel as compelled to get engaged with as they do like their TV shows, but that's also really positive for brain development and getting them to be imaginative and creative and level up literacy, because obviously, literacy was another complete casualty of the pandemic, right? So Go Kid Go was really a very mission-driven business. And we didn't really know how it would play out, because kids podcasting was a relatively unsaturated vertical, as you well know, Andy.
Yes.
And it takes time to scale shows and listenership. So we've tried everything, but really what we find is that we discover a lot of kids actually in schools now. So like through teachers telling parents about the Go Kid Go network, listening to our shows. And then we've now grown to a point where we have something for everyone. So whether your kid likes dinosaurs like Digger Rex, or they're maybe a little bit more advanced and they want, detective shows like Snoop and Snippy, or even if they want to be able to solve their own puzzles like the Upside Down Story, we really do try to provide something for everyone. And by the end of this year, we'll have over 20 programs for kids ranging from ages 3 until 12. So it's pretty diverse at this point, and we're super proud of it.
That is absolutely amazing. You should be proud of that. 20 different shows. That is quite a feat. And like, I only have one show, and I am very much like full. Like, I have no room for anything extra.
But it's an important show. It's an important show, Andy, because you curate.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe someday I'll like add one more show, and that will be my limit.
That'll be great. That'll be a big day. I know it's totally fine. And I have a great support network because obviously we have skills. So it's not like it's all me by any means.
Sure. But still, 20 shows. That is awesome. Well, and truly, like you said, it's a variety because kids are all different, right? They all have different needs, different wants, different things that will make them excited to listen. So having that many different shows makes it so much easier as a mom to find something for my kid without having to search all by myself through a podcast app, which is hard.
It's very hard. Yeah. Discoverability is a real industry issue. So for sure. And of course, this way you can find something that's, challenging for your 6-year-old, challenging for your 2-year-old, challenging for your 4-year-old. And you're not having to like play favorites at all, because it's something that's very easy to just stick on whenever you need it. And they just range from, 8 minutes up until 25 minutes. So there really is something for every situation and every kid.
I love it. Okay. So now let's specifically talk about Digger Rex. Can you tell me what made you want to start this specific podcast?
Well, I'm a mom. In addition to being an entrepreneur, I have 2 little kids. I have Lyric, she just turned 4 years old, and I have Jack, who's turning 3 next week. And Lyric, that 13-month gap between the two of them makes a big difference in their development, and she can really sort of sit down and listen to a lot of things that Jack maybe isn't as interested in. And, Jack, like I think a lot of kids his age, is extremely interested in dinosaurs, extremely interested. So I would say 95% of my conversation with my son is related to T-Rexes or, Parawallophuses or like all these things that he knows the names of that I don't, right? So I thought, there should really be an opportunity here for me to learn more about the dinosaurs that he's so interested in that I can't pronounce. And also for him to level up his literacy and his understanding by maybe creating these engaging stories that share something else about the dinosaurs. So Digger Rex, he's not a regular dinosaur. There's like a little bit of lore behind him. The whole concept is that there was this digger. My son also likes diggers, not as much as dinosaurs, but he likes them. There's this digger that paleontologists were using on a dig site in Texas. And Texas, where I'm from, is known for these like thunderstorms, So sure. I thought, this digger gets, smacked by lightning, becomes sentient. And because he's on this paleontological, site, he gets infused with the ghosts of these past dinosaurs and becomes a Digger Rex. So that sort of explains why this random, piece of machinery now sort of looks like a dinosaur and can talk and be sentient. And that was sort of the thing behind it. But the idea is that this Digger Rex, creature machine goes to different dig sites all around the world. So instead of just learning about dinosaurs, now my son's learning about, where fossils have been found, right? Like different geographical locations, different cultures, things you can see there, which has been really good for him. And I think been really good for my daughter as well, because she gets a kick out of all the beeps and the roars, even though I would say that she's much more into princesses and mermaids and fairies than she is dinosaurs. But yeah, no, she tolerates it because she does love her brother.
Yes. My son's favorite dinosaur right now is a Spinosaurus. Did not know that existed until we started reading. Yeah. Dinosaur. Because it's like the biggest one or the biggest theropod something.
Well, Spinosauruses are kind of weird. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a while that I've been Spinosaurus because I was always, all my research indicated that paleontologists had pretty much figured out that Spinosaurus was the only dinosaur that swam. Right. And then I was in a dinosaur museum like a few weekends ago, because of course, super fun.
Obviously.
Anyway, and I was reading facts and they were like, the T-Rex could swim. And I'm like, what? So now I'm like going back and checking all my research. So the show is interesting. It keeps you on your toes. There's always new findings and new discoveries.
Right.
It's so funny how a dead industry, like an extinct group of creatures,
literally extinct,
can continue to provide new information. So we can all sort of learn together from these programs.
Definitely. It is interesting how much I learn from all of the kid podcasts that I listen to while in the car or whatever with my kids. So I am definitely gaining knowledge, sometimes about dinosaurs that I don't care as much about, but here we are. So
But that's okay. Absolutely.
I'm still learning, still growing. So there we go. So kid podcasts are super great for moms and for kids. Can we talk a little bit about what you want kids and their moms to get out of Digger Rex and maybe just like all of your kid podcasts?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So one of the developmental reasons that kids really gravitate towards dinosaurs specifically is that it's something called pretend play. And I think dinosaurs are like a very sticky pretend play because whereas some kids like fantastical creatures, unicorns and whatnot, dinosaurs actually existed. So I think kids get a real extra sort of layer of intensity around it, which is why you find these kids who are talking about dinosaurs all the time. So Digger Rex was really to provide an outlet for them to level up their understanding of the world in the context of dinosaurs. And to have a really good time. I mean, all of our shows lead with entertainment and we always have like an educational element, but we like kids to get it subliminally. So I think what's great about Digger Rex is that it's a program that's very easy to multitask to. My son, one of the things that we do is that kinetic sand. I know it's terrible, but anyway, it's kinetic sand. And we hide like fossils in it, and he's been, I think on the Instagram like story thing, I've been trying to show parents like how he actually listens to the dig findings, and then we hide fossils from the different dinosaurs, or I take his plastic dinosaurs and hide them and he digs them up during the show.
Sure.
So all of these things that seem sort of rudimentary to parents or a bit boring, let's face it, they actually are really stimulating your child's brain development. And I think that by providing those layers of activity, it's screen free, but it's deeply engaging. And the kids really do get very invested in the storytelling. So that's what Digger Rex is all about for our family. And I hope a lot of other parents are getting something out of it. And then, similarly, like our network, obviously not everything has been created, specifically for my children. We have a universe of 5 shows. That's like the Pflugerville universe. And the idea was to create like an Avengers style world for younger children where they could get attached to characters in one situation and then actually follow them through different adventures. So Bobby Wonder is very much like, superhero, like aliens, saving things, pow, wow, right? And there's fun things about it. But the cool thing is that Lucy Wow, who also lives in Pflugerville, she's an inventor and a tinker and a doer. And that program leads into this whole like STEM focused learning podcast. So all of those 5 shows, it's Bobby Wonder, Lucy Wow, Floozeville, Whale of a Tale, and what is the other one? Oh, and Story Train, because Story Train goes to the Rainbow Tunnel. So younger kids actually get into Pflugerville's universe in like a really traditional way.
Sure.
But yeah, so that little universe of shows, it all lives together and they cross-pollinate. So kids can discover something that they like in one universe and actually just track that same character into another story, which is cool. And then we have new shows all the time, like Musical Time Machine, such a good show. Love it. I'm such a musical fan. But basically, it's about this like teacher who's really dorky and he has these kids who like interrupt his class, and it always ends in an incredible song. We have like a very fantastic composer named Danny Teeger who works on that show, but he created it. And so like if you want to hear a riveting rendition of a song about the Salem witch trials or anything like that for older kids, it's fantastic. We have Time Traveling Tanya, which is like a magic tortoise who transports her best friend Tanya, who's a little kid, to different eras in history to meet, all kinds of historical, figures from Mozart to, Harriet Tubman to whoever you may think of, right? So all of these shows, like they speak to a different interest and they speak to a different level. And the idea is that much like your program, we're really a family network. So you don't really outgrow Go Kid Go. I mean, you use it throughout your childhood. And then as an adult, you can go back to it and use it for your children. So we really hope it's an enduring product.
And I love that because, like, won't that be fun when my son comes back in 20 years or whatever with his kids and it's like, hey, this is what I listen to, because like obviously kid podcasts weren't around when I was a kid, so I can't be like, hey, but I can show him a movie or something that I watched and be like, hey, I watched this when I was your age. So he can do that with kid podcasts, which is so fun. It's like a whole new medium that he can
it's cross-generational. Cross-generational, which is just such a like an enriching, beautiful experience, isn't it? So I think, I think it's fantastic. And I think that your show is excellent for the same exact reason, like your son is going to be looking for things for his kids, and find his mother's podcast where you talked about all of your feelings about all these shows and introduced so many different opportunities to him. So I don't know. I just think it's a beautiful thing. And I think everyone builds something with the hope that it's, lasting.
Definitely. Definitely. I agree. I could talk about podcasts all day. But okay. So let's talk specifically about Digger X again. How would you describe the vibe of Digger X? Like, I feel like we've talked about it being fun and specifically for dinosaur lovers, but is there like a word or like phrase that you would use to describe the vibe of Digger X?
As an adult, I find it to be like a little bit quirky and hilarious.
Okay.
Like he's a very like I feel like he got struck by lightning, was like a little bit razzle dazzled, and he's just like a very spunky machine. You know, I love that he roars and then like immediately does a beep beep, like a burp almost that he can't control. It's a very fun show, and it's a very enriching soundscape, right? Because you have dinosaurs, you have diggers, so right there you have kids who love both of those, and then you have the cultural aspects, right? So like if you're in China, you're hearing sounds that you might hear on a dig site in China. If you're talking about, you know, the Isle of Wight, you might hear seagulls, you might hear waves. Like there are just a lot of really cool sound effects. And so I think that kids who like dinosaurs will just be enthralled, obviously, by the standard, you know, roaring and stomping. And I think that kids who maybe have a more expansive level of interest will still enjoy it because it's very captivating.
I love that. Okay. So I'm going to ask you what your favorite episode is, but to give you a second to think about it, can you first tell me where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find us at gokidgo.com, and you can search for Go Kid Go on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts, or you can search for specific shows like Digger X just by typing in Digger X wherever you find your podcasts.
Fabulous. And then social media. I know you guys are on Instagram because I follow you there, but are you anywhere else?
Yeah, we're everywhere. So we're on Facebook. We're on, I guess, what do you call it? X now. We're on X. We're getting into YouTube. So 2024 will be offering a lot more interactive, content for families there. And we're on Instagram. So we are findable. And again, you can find links to all of our social direct from gokidgo.com.
Fabulous. I'll make sure to link all of that in the show notes so that people can find you wherever they want to find you. And okay, so now I want to hear your favorite episode or couple of episodes from Digger X, because I know it's hard to choose just one.
Okay, so my favorite episode of Digger X personally is Guanlong because it's a dinosaur I'd never heard of.
Okay.
I thought the episode was incredibly well researched and I just learned a lot. So as like a parent, I found that one like fantastic because also I'm super tired of hearing about like T-Rex, Spinosaurus, and Ankylosaurus, right? But I feel like Guanlong was like, whoa, what is that? But yeah, there's a lot. And obviously watching my son listen to the T-Rex episode 8,000 times is immensely rewarding. So not to knock it.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I get that. Sometimes it's like, I need to learn something new about something that you will pay attention to. So let's.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally get that from a mom's perspective. Digger X, because it's a kid podcast, I like to ask, like, what is the age range that it's like specifically targeted for?
Yeah, so, I would say 3 to 7, and it's a wide range. I think 3 and 4-year-olds will enjoy the sound effects.
Totally.
They'll enjoy hearing the sounds of dinosaur names that they've familiarized themselves with. I think the older kids will benefit from some of the detail around the episodes because it does get quite detailed in terms of what the dinosaurs could do, what animals they're related to today, where they were, like where they existed, right? Like, so there's all of this like much deeper information that I think would appeal to older children. I find it, I'm hard pressed to imagine an 11-year-old turning it on, but you never know. You never know.
It's true.
Somebody could be really into this and find it fascinating. And like I said, as an adult, I do still learn new things listening to Digger X.
Totally. Well, and let's be real. There are probably plenty of 11-year-olds that have listened to Digger X because their 4-year-old sister or brother was like, that it's my turn to choose and I'm choosing Digger X. So
I know.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute delight. I love talking podcasts, especially kid podcasts, because you know that I love a kid podcast. It saves my bacon on the regular as a mom.
Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear it, Andy. And if there's anything that we don't have that you see come out this year, we're always open to ideas. We're here to serve.
I love that. Okay. I'll be thinking. Maybe I'll ask my kids and see what they're missing in the world of kid podcasts.
Cool. Sounds good, Andy. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you know someone or a family who could use Digger Rex in their life, will you share this episode with them? Also, if you have the itch to start your own podcast, fill out the intake form in the show notes so I can help you make the podcast of your dreams. Talk to you soon. Paleontol and paleo paleontol pa- paleo paleontol okay paleo paleontologic paleontology paleontological